Hello and welcome to tonight's webcast, Micronutrients, a review part 2 with LaValle. LaValle is a registered dietitian and nutritionist who has years of experience in hospital-based dietetics, as well as extensive experience in integrative medicine settings, including in clinic. I think I just said that. She's extremely knowledgeable on all things dietetics, and I know you'll enjoy her presentation today. We'll open up for a question and answer session at about 9:45 till. So please feel free to raise your hand or use the chat box if you have a question. I'm Libby Bricker, your moderator, and I am recording tonight's session. I will post it to our blog on metaboliccode.com for reference within 24 to 48 hours of tonight's event. So again, the recording will be available for reference at metaboliccode.com/blog for reference in 1 to 2 days. Laura, take it away. Yes, you are self-muted. You are self-muted for some reason. You're going to have to click on your controls.
There, am I good now?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. It wasn't highlighted like normal, so.
No problem.
All right, welcome everyone. Really enjoyed our last micronutrient review and got good responses to it, so I hope you all enjoy this one just as much. Let's just get started right in. Today we're going to be talking about the water-soluble nutrients. And before that, I have a little bit of cleanup to do on answering a question about vitamin E and tocotrienols. So can you advance me? Go ahead and advance me, Libby, or am I advancing? Okay. So for those of you who did not join us last time, there's just a couple of introductory slides here that I'll repeat a little bit. What we talk about in our metabolic code health programs is, you know, for health and weight management, it's a lot more than just everybody can eat a certain diet or, you know, just make sure people have enough nutrients and, you know, you'll be good. We're building our health programs around other factors that can have a huge impact on overall metabolic function, like stress, gut health, anything that can influence thyroid, which can be anything from toxins in the environment to a gut health related core problem of autoimmune thyroid issues. So we look at things from a more global systems biology type approach, but we do still have to pay attention to micronutrient status. And the reason why I've highlighted all the topics like insulin resistance, gut health, stress, thyroid in green, in the light green, is because your micronutrients can impact any of these areas. So this is the reason why I decided to do a review of micronutrients, because it does impact every area, and believe it or not, we do still see some common, some things that we see that indicate people not getting quite enough of certain micronutrients. So it does still come up. So this is just a quick rundown of some of the nutrients that are needed for each area. For insulin resistance, the big three: magnesium, chromium, zinc. Vanadium is an important trace mineral. Thiamin, I'll kind of be reviewing some information about that and its role. You know, gut health, in terms of micronutrients, zinc can be an important one. For stress, magnesium is huge, your B vitamins and vitamin C, because it's actually a nutrient that is needed by the adrenal glands in relatively high amounts. So this is just kind of a quick rundown and listing of all the things, all the different nutrients that are needed for different things in the body. just to drive home the point of how the micronutrient intake can influence this. So as we review, I go through the nutrient itself, what it's needed for in the body, the deficiency symptoms that we most commonly see, are there any toxicity issues with the nutrient, and then what the RDAs or DRIs are for that nutrient, along with upper limit on that, and food sources, and then if there's anything else that influences, you know, the particular nutrient. Now, this is a repeat slide, but I just want to, I've got some slides toward the end of the presentation that really drive this point home about the different nutrients that you get from the different families of food. So with fruits, for example, your primary macronutrient in fruits it's, are your sugars, so it's carbs. You'll see like things like maybe a gram of a protein in a fruit, and it's normally in the skin. So, but it comes along with a good bit of water in each piece of fruit that you eat. There's always a little bit of fiber, but the micronutrients that you tend to get in fruits are vitamin C and bioflavonoids, depending on the color of the fruit, you know, maybe some beta-carotene or, you know, vitamin A source. You'll see folate pretty commonly, and always a good bit of potassium. Surprisingly, there'll be trace amounts of fatty acids. Now, notice that I have the arrow up on fruits because that means you get more sugars with those. With vegetables, it's kind of the same package. You get a lot of water, you get a lot of fiber, you'll tend to see a good bit of folate, vitamin A, vitamin C, and a lot of potassium. But in a much lower sugar package. So vegetables do contain the macronutrients, carbs, and all the carbs coming in there are almost all from glucose and fructose, but way fewer sugars per serving than compared to fruits. And a similar rundown that I gave for grains. Now, one of the things that you'll read about, you know, when it comes to intake of grains, because it's all viewed as, you know, this gluten-free diets are viewed as kind of a fad thing, and people say, well, you need to get whole wheat because that's one of the best sources of your B vitamins, as if you can't get B vitamins from any other food. So I've got some interesting slides for you towards the end of this, but with grains, we get carbs, but in the form of starch, not sugars. And you'll get some water, but not nearly as much. Grains can have a lot of fiber, depending on what grain category it is, and a good bit of different other micronutrients. In particular, if they're whole grains like whole wheat, it's a good source of selenium. And then your protein foods bring with them more than just the proteins and amino acids. They of course, we get some fats in them, but you'd be surprised at the different B vitamins and minerals that you get in animal proteins. So I just like to make the point that how the different food categories and what are the nutrients that you get from each of those types of foods. Okay, let's move on, Libby. And I don't want to dwell on this one. I want to get on to our other slides, but just making the point that the studies do consistently show that we have a chronic underintake of a lot of the micronutrients, and the reason is because people don't eat enough of the most nutrient-dense foods, the fruits and vegetables. They tend to take in a lot of refined sugars, refined flours. Heck, you know, you look at some diet foods and you're eating a mass of something, but you know, there are hardly any real nutrients in them. So it's very possible to get through a lot of days eating very few really good energy nutrient packet foods. So and then even if you do try to eat more conscientiously and eat healthy, we have this challenge that the nutrients in foods are declining, and I went through this early in the part one of this webinar, But just to remind you, one of the examples was there are people that have been following the nutrition content of foods from the 1950s to the present day, and every year the nutrients tend to go down, down, down. So for an example, magnesium in Brussels sprouts from the 1950s to now has reduced to less than half what it used to be. Because if you think about that, the RDA for magnesium is about 300 milligrams. You look at taking in 100 grams of that food, that's about a half a cup. And you just think, well, if I eat a cup of Brussels sprouts each day and I eat a green salad that's loaded with magnesium and I have nuts and seeds, I could come pretty close with a decent, nutrient-dense diet back in the day, but not on these 8 milligrams per 100 or less. So the nutrients in our foods are declining. And in addition, we have things that tend to deplete nutrients on us. If we're having to take prescriptions of any type, if a woman's on oral contraceptives, we're not even talking necessarily treating something, but if you're on something for birth control, the oral contraceptives deplete a lot of nutrients. But look here, real common, metformin depletes B12. That's a very common, drug for insulin resistance, as most of you should know. So it's just between the combination of the nutrients in foods declining, people might need to be on a medication of some type that depletes nutrients, and then we could have increased needs as well. So, when you're under a lot of chronic stress, your body burns through B vitamins much more quickly, and vitamin C. And another big thing that causes increased need is the fact that our body has to deal with the so many toxins now from our environment. So, when you look at the list, which I've got in an upcoming slide, of all the vitamins and minerals needed for our phase 1 and phase 2 detox pathways, we're probably at a time where we have a much increased need just from environmental toxicity alone. So when you put this all together, it means we really have to pay attention to micronutrient intake. So these are the slides showing pathways of liver detoxification and the nutrient needs that this creates. So you have chemical X, just fill in the blank, any type of chemical category. The first process that the chemical has to go through is phase 1, where the chemical becomes more water soluble because of phase 1 activity. So these are all the cytochrome P450 enzymes that work on the substance and change it and start breaking it down in a sense. And these processes cause a lot of free radicals. So one of the main things that's needed in response is we need antioxidants to help neutralize those free radicals that get created. So then you go down below with phase 2 and you see there are different phase 2 pathways. There's the glucuronidation pathway, which needs fiber, which is a macronutrient, but magnesium and B vitamins in particular, and also sulfur compounds. Or there's your acetylation pathways that need more of your B vitamins and C vitamins, and they require a base amino acid for these processes. And then there's your glutathione pathway, where we need a lot of cysteine and our methylating vitamins, which are, of course, your B6, B12, and folate. So that just gives you a baseline of a few. So I think it's the next slide where I have them listed out by phase 1 and phase 2 specifically. We can go ahead and advance. So you see here antioxidants are at the top of the list for phase 1. We also need choline, vitamin C, vitamin E, niacin, copper, magnesium, zinc, and omega-3 fats are all nutrients that are needed for phase 1 processes. And phase 2, we need all those amino acids that I showed and had listed. folate, magnesium, manganese, selenium, riboflavin, pantothenic, vitamin C, and zinc. And I'm not sure that this is completely comprehensive. There may be a few more, but just to give you an idea of how much our detoxification processes of the body require a lot of micronutrients. Okay, now let's do our cleanup about vitamin E. Last time I talked about vitamin E and tocotrienols as another family of vitamin E molecules. So basically what the question was is, what is the dosage? So I thought I'd just go through a little bit of background information first, in that so we can explain what tocotrienols are. Basically, you can think of it as like a vitamin E family that's similar to tocopherols, but they're structurally distinct, and they're also contained in the same parts of the plant, the endosperm of nuts and seeds, oh, I'm not thinking of the word, but like the kernel in the middle of an apricot, the dicot in the middle. It's like the seed in that type of fruit, like peaches and apricots, that would contain some. And it's also in palm and rice bran oil. Now, what's been going on lately is looking at the action of tocotrienols in the body, and what they're finding is that it seems to be much more potent than even the alpha tocopherol and delta tocopherol, the tocopherols, in terms of its antioxidant capacity, and therefore its ability to be neuroprotective in particular is an area that's being researched. But it seems to have very strong anti-cancer activity as well, and in fact they're looking at tocotrienols. They're looking at delivering them along with chemotherapeutic agents and finding it to help the ability of chemotherapies to work better, because of the fact that they take out some of these inflammatory pathways that end up causing the chemotherapeutic agents to not be effective against the cancer. So it's a real exciting area of research, but they're so anti-inflammatory because they inhibit COX-2 enzymes. They also inhibit IL-6 and TNF-alpha production, so very, very potent anti-inflammatory actions. And I think we should have another line or two there. So one of the issues that has come up with tocotrienols is the fact that they don't have a transport mechanism. If you look at the information on the Linus Pauling library, which I recommended to you last time, it's Linus Pauling Institute is part of Oregon State. They have fantastic information on each of the nutrients, and they have said that basically they seem to not pay a ton of attention to tocotrienols because of the fact that the body only has a transport mechanism for tocopherols, and they get transported with a tocopherol transport protein. So they've been looking at, well, how do tocotrienols absorb? They don't have a known transport mechanism for a long time. Now they're found that they absorb through the micelles into lymphatics. So anything that absorbs rather directly like that, you need fat in the diet, and you need bile salts to be able to absorb them. But from there they circulate, and they exert their mechanism of action, and then they're excreted. So what manufacturers are doing is looking for the best types of emulsions that will improve the absorption of tocotrienols. Is there another line there, Libby? Okay, so the dosages. So I was a little bit high on my guess on part one. The dosages depends on the manufacturer. So you really and whether it's just gamma tocopherol or delta tocopherol or tocotrienols or tocotrienol mix. So you really kind of have to follow the manufacturer's instructions for dosages, but you'll see more in line with like the 50 to 100 milligram dosages. And if you, for example, if you look on Life Extension, they have said that, you know, higher dosages like 200 milligrams, that some of the tocotrienol can actually convert to tocopherol. So it doesn't necessarily do a lot of good to take higher dosages. But I know I've seen higher dosages, and that's why I say, you know, you should follow manufacturer instructions and information as close as possible. Because if you look at studies, there was a study that showed that tocotrienol from palm oil reduced carotid artery plaque. That was a 240 milligram dose. So that information and products will probably continue to evolve, but from the sounds of the information, you can be effective with cholesterol and different things that if you're using it as an anti-inflammatory, you could actually measure IL-6 and see, you know, the response to it from before and after blood labs. But it sounds like you'll be effective in 100 milligram, on average 100 milligram dosages. So let's get into our water-soluble vitamins. Vitamin C, we start out with. This is an amazing nutrient. For maintenance, I really do feel that, you know, once you have a person sort of metabolically more balanced, more nutritionally balanced, and they're eating a good bit of fruits and vegetables, I feel like you could get by with a, you know, 90 milligrams is the DRI for men and 75 milligrams is the DRI for women. You can keep most people pretty healthy and well on those types of dosages. What happens with vitamin C is when people get a virus, for example, you can, it's like it increases the demand, so it's a conditional demand. So if someone gets a cold, I have no problem upping the dosages to, you know, 2 to 5 grams per day, or 2,000 to 5,000 milligrams or more. So getting a little bit ahead of myself, but it's water soluble. It's got very low toxicity, and there are some astronomically high dosages that are being used in the literature for things like, you know, antiviral with HIV and things like that. But collagen is needed for, vitamin C is needed for collagen formation. That's one of the primary uses. It is a potent antioxidant. But you really need to think in terms of vitamin C as a really important immune support. I'll never forget in my biochemistry class in college, took a couple of biochemistry courses, and my professor studied vitamin C for a while, and what he said was that they couldn't believe how much more active immune cells became when a dose of vitamin C was given. And I've never forgotten that, because I know a lot of the studies would have you think that vitamin C does almost nothing, and for example, for fighting a cold. However, most of the studies don't go up all that high on dosage. And what it comes down to is a pretty solid reduction of time or duration or severity of symptoms of cold and flu, and most people will take that. And the bottom line for me is it's not a question whether vitamin C supports immune function. It absolutely does. It's just a matter of dose, and I've come to believe that the problem is people don't probably take quite enough. So we go really high on doses, you know, up to, I'd say, not over 10 grams for a cold or flu, but up to that, and in higher doses, during the episode, it's much more effective, and then you just go back to a regular everyday sort of maintenance after that. Vitamin C is needed for adrenaline, for the adrenals, big time, for cortisol production. You keep yourself with good intakes of vitamin C. It can help the adrenal glands from becoming depleted. It enhances iron absorption, and it enhances carnitine production. It's needed to help the body metabolize and take care of histamine. So when we see people that are having problems with, itchiness in their skin or a lot of histamine production that's affecting asthma or allergies, environmental allergies, we like to do vitamin C flushes. So this is where the person takes buffered vitamin C powder, and half a teaspoon or a teaspoon at a time. Every half hour to 1 hour they take a dose. And we say to take it to bowel tolerance. So what that means is you take it until you finally will get a loose stool. And that's your bowel tolerance. And then whatever that dosage is, the amount that you've taken total to create the loose stool, let's say you have to take, let's go high, let's say 20 grams. Then you cut that in half. 10 grams would be that person's dosage of vitamin C to take. And we don't normally keep them on it indefinitely, keep them on it for a few weeks to a few months. But when people need vitamin C just on appearance or looking, the most common things that you'll see are bleeding gums. You can almost get a good, after so many years, you can almost kind of tell a person that's got some swelling in their gum tissue, and sometimes it'll look kind of red, sometimes not, but just you can tell it's kind of swelled. So I'll ask people, do you have any problems with bleeding gums? Or you can just make that a question if you have an intake questionnaire. So if people have a lot of broken capillaries in their face, or if they bruise easily, these are signs that their body hasn't made, good collagen. Or if you just see that they're more easily wrinkled, have a good bit more wrinkling in their skin, perhaps vitamin C could be boosted. Although normally when I see a lot of wrinkling in the skin, a person that's wrinkled a little more than they should be for their age, I think in terms of something that's broken down their gut, like they're gluten intolerant and they just aren't absorbing any nutrients very well. But it's very common to see the bleeding gums and people reporting that they bruise easily. Or if people have allergy and inflammation symptoms, like I mentioned, like asthma, exercise-induced, problems with asthma, they need more vitamin C. Or if they just say, I sure do get an awful lot of colds and flu. Vitamin C won't always take care of the problem alone if that's the case, if they seem to have depressed immunity, because typically it is also suppressed from something else, either high sugar diet and or what we see most commonly is just they've been under an awful lot of chronic long-term stress, and that will suppress immunity. So toxicity, the upper limit in terms of the DRIs is set at 2,000 milligrams, and that is because some people will develop diarrhea at that amount. But on the Linus Pauling site, they say that 2 to 10 grams per day is very, very well tolerated. There is one minor issue, might not be so minor if you've gotten kidney stones, but dosages of 1,500 milligrams in one study did find that it increased the risk of kidney stones somewhat. This was a study in men, but the studies have not been consistent on that at all, whether it does increase risk for kidney stones. They know that when people take in more vitamin C, you have more oxalates in the urine. but it doesn't always necessarily mean that it's going to be prone to forming into a kidney stone. So that's the rub with that. My bottom line on vitamin C is if I'm having to give constant, 5-gram or up dosages, I think the people have something else going on. So we really tend to work more in the 500 milligram range, or 250 to 500 milligram in terms of a maintenance dose. Like I said, once we have everybody's other issues worked out, and then we have it on hand for being able to take higher dosages if you start to feel a cold or flu coming on. And then, of course, you can get plenty of vitamin C when you're eating a lot of your fruits and vegetables. Kiwis are a particularly good source, and bell peppers, the red peppers, are actually the highest, but strawberries. So a lot of easy ways to get good vitamin C in your diet. This was just an interesting study that showed that vitamin C is needed to help make carnitine, which is the substance that shuttles energy for the heart muscle. And what this study found was that in obese individuals that were put on vitamin C with exercise, and then there was placebo group that had no vitamin C but just did the same amount of exercise. Interesting, it was very significant in the results. The vitamin C group, the heart rate reduced significantly, lowered on average 11 beats per minute compared to the non-vitamin C group, which lowered only 3 beats per minute. And the perception of exertion decreased, and the general fatigue score decreased. So people did not get as fatigued with exercise when they were on vitamin C, and they actually got more I don't know if it's this study or another one, but it improves fat burning. So if you have someone that's real overweight and they have a little bit of problems with stamina during exercise, vitamin C is something that can help. And that was a moderate dose there. Okay, moving on. Thiamin. Important B vitamin, surprising what it can do with that little 1.2 to 1.1 milligram for men or women DRI. So it's super important. It functions as a coenzyme in energy production, so carbohydrate metabolism and ATP production. It's a super important substance. It also is important for the metabolism of your branched-chain amino acids and for the production of acetylcholine, which of course is our memory molecule. But newer information that a lot of people aren't aware of is how important thiamine is for insulin synthesis. And of course, all the B vitamins play a different role in our neurotransmitter production. So super important for, mood and outlook. You will, if any of you have ever worked in a hospital, as you know, you will see B vitamin depletion symptoms in people who are trying to recover from alcoholism. So Wernicke's encephalopathy is what we see in alcoholics. So thiamine gets depleted from alcohol. And when people have out-and-out deficiency, it's the beriberi, of course, which we only see nowadays pretty much in an alcoholic sometimes. But what we'll see more typically are things like a person who tends to be very nervous or irritable, depressed, because it's so important for energy production. That's why I think fatigue a lot of times goes along with depression, because you're just not making energy like you should. And sometimes it'll cause a lowered appetite. So our big focus nowadays really with thiamine, besides mood and stress, mood, those types of issues, we're also really looking to thiamine to help with better insulin and glucose regulation. And the good sources of thiamine are beans and legumes, but look at the best source listed here, pork. 0.81 milligrams per 3 ounces. So that's almost the RDA. You could get the RDA easily with, 4 or 5 ounces of pork. Whole grains are a okay source, and wheat germ. Now, wheat germ is listed as a great source, but look at this. It's a whole cup, and it's really hard to eat a whole cup of wheat germ. Normally you would put maybe a tablespoon on top of your other cereal. But anyway, it's a decent source if you tolerate wheat. And no known toxicity to thiamine. There's no upper limit set on it. As I said, alcohol depletes, and there's the thought that some of the tannins in coffee and tea may lower the absorption somewhat. So, so many people are daily coffee and tea drinkers. That's one thing that may make people need to have a little bit more than that DRI amount. But in terms of recommended dosage, you'll very, very frequently see far over the RDA in multivitamins and minerals, for example. It's not uncommon to see 10 milligram dosages. They're very, very well tolerated, and just due to things like daily use of alcohol and coffee and tea, I would say you should probably look to get at least double the DRI dosages to make sure that you're getting plenty. Our next one is B2, riboflavin, and again the dosages are not that high for what all the jobs that riboflavin does. In particular, it's needed in the Krebs cycle for ATP production. It is also needed for folate and B6 conversion. So when you take in folate from a food, if you don't have a little bit of riboflavin, you won't be able to convert folate to the active form or B6. So that's why they always recommend, not taking B vitamins in separately, but being best to take them in complexes, not only because folate and B6 need riboflavin for conversion, but because the taking in a lot of one will tend to block absorption of another one. So you always want to take them in balance. But riboflavin, look here, a really important role in keeping glutathione active in the body, and therefore it's very critical for lowering oxidative stress, because glutathione, as you know, is an important antioxidant for the body. Interesting deficiency symptoms that you see with riboflavin. Riboflavin will cause a redness and swelling in the tongue in particular. But if you see people that have real red lips and real red tongue, think B2 deficiency. Chelosis is the cracks at the corners of the mouth. And normally if I see someone with chelosis, they're on a lot of medication. So they're on things that are depleting their nutrients. If you see, I don't see this very often, but if you see an oily, like scaly skin around the nose and mouth, that's associated with riboflavin. And again, riboflavin is, of course, needed for neurotransmitter. All the B vitamins are, so you'll see that depression is listed as a deficiency symptom, and nervousness again. Hypersensitivity to light is a big one. Oh, and one that I didn't list on here. People will report they have burning in their feet. Think of primarily riboflavin for that, but all the B vitamins are important for that. But hypersensitivity to light. If you have people that are hypersensitive to light, I think of riboflavin. And they've also got some interesting studies on use of riboflavin to help prevent migraines. What they're finding out now, as you know, if I see someone who has chelosis or a red tongue, I mean, that's getting pretty close to an out-and-out deficiency. But what we're looking at more and more, as you know, with nutrients is how much of our chronic, not enough or inadequate intake on a daily basis is contributing to things like cataracts. You know, they've actually looked at intake of riboflavin, and higher intakes help reduce risk of cataracts, as well as stroke and cancer and cardiovascular disease. So, and a lot of it is just because it's so important for that glutathione and keeping, you know, helps keep inflammation down in the body. This is another one that there's no known toxicity, or that's why they have not set an upper limit. Riboflavin is the one that makes your urine turn yellow when you take a multivitamin. That's from the riboflavin specifically. So good sources are milk, again, if you tolerate it, eggs, cheese, almonds, salmon, spinach, beef, broccoli. And I look at these and I go, I eat a lot of these foods pretty much, I eat some of these pretty much daily, you know, between eggs, cheese, almonds, salmon, spinach, beef, broccoli. It's pretty easy to get in enough riboflavin. Again, notice that I'm harping on this to make a point, but grains are often listed as one of your best ways to get your B vitamins. And if you look here, whole wheat bread is really low as a source compared to some of the, well, of course they don't have the amounts, but I know that I listed these by what are the highest. So milk is the highest, eggs would be next. So there are several other foods that you can get more from, actually. So, okay, moving on. Our next one is B3, niacin. And the milligrams, DRI are a little bit higher for male. Again, the first number is for male. The second number is for female. So 16 milligrams for men, 14 milligrams for women. Just slight differences there. And again, functions in Krebs cycle energy production. Niacin you need for your deamination of your amino acids, and you also need it for fatty acid synthesis. So your deficiency, that should be another bullet there, that DEF is deficiency. Symptoms are pellagra, which is the 3 Ds. When people, let's say in third world countries, have this, they'll get the combination of dermatitis, diarrhea, and dementia. So it's those are when you have a severe deficiency. You don't see them too much in anybody up and walking around, but you will see more things like fatigue, depression, apathy. So it's a real important one for production of neurotransmitters. It's also super important apparently for helping prevent damage to DNA. So the stability of our genome, niacin is real important for. And also another one that is, and because of the genetic connection there, is super important for cancer prevention. Now niacin is our dear little friend that we all know for helping to manage lipids. And you can take it in higher doses for that, and that's because you see there that it helps our body process fatty acids. So that's one of the ways that that it works for helping for, you know, cardiovascular health. But it is one that can be toxic in higher doses. We know that when you start getting up around 30 milligrams or higher, people can get flushing from that. But what they're really looking at being cautious with, as we started going up and up and up for using niacin to help people manage triglycerides in particular, we started to see that we could get elevated liver enzymes. So it can cause some liver damage in higher dosages. But it's an excellent way to help control triglycerides in some people. It really seems to help some people more than others. So it's worth a try adding higher dose niacin if some of your other things aren't working. But good sources, again, look here, these are animal protein sources, are really your best sources. Turkey, tuna, chicken, all you get about 10 milligrams per 3 ounce. So again, with a good protein intake, it's pretty easy to get the RDA just with eating a higher protein diet. Beef is 5 milligrams per 3 ounce. Fortified cereal is a real good source if you can eat some grains and you tolerate them fine. But your whole grains and legumes are a decent source, but not nearly as high as some of these others. You can also make niacin. Your body can make niacin from the amino acid tryptophan. So niacin, again, it's a super important. It helps with, in particular, I think it seems like it's niacin that can really help with energy. But it's the B complex in total, since they all take a role in that Krebs cycle thing. But in terms of a typical dosage, I'm fine with 20, 25 milligram dosages. That's a little over RDA. Although I don't always think it's especially necessary, especially if people are taking in a good bit of animal proteins. But it's pretty well tolerated. Most people, I have seen some people that seem more sensitive to the flushing thing, and they'll flush from, say, 20 milligrams in a multivitamin, so you just need to be aware of that. Okay, B6. The dosages are a little bit lower on this. Actually, I think it's 1.7 for male and 1.3 for female. That should be turned around, but that's for adults 19 and up. And again, it's the cofactor and all these different enzyme reactions in the body. It's needed for amino acid, nitrogen metabolism, processing. B6 actually is one of the substances that can help the conversion of tryptophan to niacin. And of course, B6 is super important in the conversion of the amino acid precursors into our serotonin, dopamine, norepi, GABA, even needed for heme synthesis. Why would that be? It's because it's so important for amino acid processing. And B6 is especially important for conversion of homocysteine to cysteine. So it's another real important one that we'll see nervous system effects in, so depression and mood, and even carpal tunnel. People have elevated homocysteine. We want to make sure they're getting adequate B6 and folate and B12. And can influence cognitive decline. Kidney stones. When people have a tendency towards kidney stones, B6 is one of the important nutrients to supplement in people. And you can get plenty of B6 from a wide variety of foods, but some of your better sources are potatoes, chicken, turkey, salmon, banana, spinach. Interesting vegetable juice cocktail like V8 is actually a decent source. You can get in too much B6 in these very high dosages when you start approaching 100 milligrams, and 100 milligrams is set as the upper limit. Numbness and tingling in the fingers is the most common thing that you'll see. And so if people take 500 milligrams per day for a while, that's when you'll start to see that numbness and tingling set in. I've actually seen it set in lower doses, but I have seen that here and there. I'll tell you where I saw that is in people that were doing chelation. And once they went off of chelation, they stayed on that very high vitamin and mineral that they were given for when they were taking chelation, and when they were no longer on the chelation, they didn't need the high dose and they got the symptoms. That's one example I can remember for sure. Okay, folate. Our DRI is now set at 400 micrograms per day for folate, and it gets converted to the active form, the tetrahydrofolate or tetrahydrofolic acid. And it's one of the super, super important ones for maintenance of our DNA and RNA. for synthesis and repair. So not just for maintenance, but for synthesis as we're making it. It's real important in cellular division, genetic transmission, and so it's one of our major methyl donors that's super important for epigenetics. So it's those methyl tags on our genes that influence the expression of our genes. And it helps convert homocysteine to methionine and then on to SAMe. There's supposed to be an E on the end of there. Sorry about that. And again, another real, important one in depression and anxiety issues. If you see people with elevated homocysteine, it's the nutrient responsible for when you don't get enough. It causes megaloblastic anemia. And of course, how folate became very well known was when pregnant women don't get enough, it can cause neural tube defects in the baby. So because of the elevated homocysteine, if you don't get enough folate, you're at an increased risk for cardiovascular disease and especially stroke, increased risk for cancer and Alzheimer's and other dementia. It's also super important, playing a role, again, because of this DNA repair. It's a nutrient involved in cervical dysplasia. When women develop cervical dysplasia, give high-dose folate to help turn that around. Of course, I never like giving a B vitamin alone, but I might give high-dose folate and then give a B complex in addition. So dietary sources, leafy greens are always pretty darn high in folate. Oranges are actually a good source of folate, oranges and orange juice, and your beans and legumes. The reason that there's an upper limit set for folate is because if people take in a ton of folate, it can actually mask a B12 deficiency. Okay, next is just a reminder, and I'm sure most of you do this already, but we try to make sure that everybody gets screened for the MTHFR polymorphism, to make sure that their body can convert folate to the active form. If they have that polymorphism and they can't, they're going to be more prone to blood clots, to depression, and so it's super important to make sure that people get screened for that. And if I'm doing folate, for example, to try to help get homocysteine down, or to take care of a megaloblastic anemia, you can go up to 4,000 micrograms per day, but then I do try to get it back down to a 400 to 800 microgram dose, so we don't take a chance on masking any B12 problems. Okay, next we have B12. The DRI is 2.4 micrograms per day, which is pretty low. This is one where people tend to do much higher dosage. It's a super important methyl donor, another one that you need to bring homocysteine down. Again, important for the metabolism of all our carbohydrates, protein, and fat. But B12 is super important for nerve axon growth and maintenance and formation of the myelin sheath. And that's the one that tends to be most responsible for neuropathies, is B12 depletion. But a lot of people don't realize that it also plays a role in bone cell and in bone activity and metabolism, and that it works along with the folate to make, most people know it works along with folate for red blood cells. So anemias, folate and B12 will be important in correcting non-iron deficiency anemias. So B12 is an interesting vitamin because you need that intrinsic factor and you need good stomach acid production to absorb it. And so because as people grow older, they tend to lose their intrinsic factor and their HCl production may go down. That's why you tend to see elderly people that are more at risk for developing B12 deficiency. And when I was doing conventional dietetics, I always liked it when I saw very proactive nursing homes that were very good about testing all their residents for B12 deficiency. What I would say is the most common thing that you'll see for B12 deficiency is symptoms are either elevated homocysteine or anemias, but you will see B12 can really help depression, especially in elderly, or if an elderly patient seems disoriented. B12 is usually the culprit there. If you have numbness and tingling in the extremities or neuropathies, you think first usually of B12. And Bell's palsy. Sources are seafood, fish. Again, look at these animal protein sources as being your best source. Brewer's yeast or nutritional yeast is a very good source, but it'd take 2 rounded teaspoons to get the RDA, and that's a little bit hard to take in every single day. So I prefer to get it more from your animal protein sources. Okay, let's move along here so I can make sure I get through our slides in a decent time. I didn't have time to go through all the minerals like I'd hoped. I wanted to highlight a couple of the minerals, and you'll see why in a moment. But magnesium is one of the minerals that we just feel, and I'm sure that most people do an integrated practice now, it's one of the minerals that we pay a lot of attention to because not only is it needed for healthy teeth and bones, but it is super important for helping prevent type 2 diabetes. It helps insulin sensitivity. So it not only will play a role in glucose regulation, but it'll play a role in blood pressure. And when people have a tendency to have very tight muscles because magnesium is needed for muscle relaxation, I always think of magnesium, and I help people replete magnesium to help take care of that problem. People say, I go to a masseuse and 20 minutes after I come out of there, my muscles are tight again. They need magnesium. And magnesium, for that same reason, can help constipation and migraine headaches. So it's a super important individual mineral to pay attention to. And let's move on. Selenium, same type of thing. This is a trace mineral. We only need 55 micrograms per day as a DRI, but so important for detoxification processes in the body, conversion of thyroid hormones, and that's just a super important trace mineral for our health. Dietary, you can get well over the DRI in one Brazil nut, believe it or not. And then again, your animal proteins are good sources, and actually whole grains are a better source of this particular nutrient, but not everybody can tolerate whole grains. Okay, let's move on. And that's just one of an early study that sort of brought to attention how big of a role selenium can play in cancer reduction. Okay, let's move on. It's because it's needed for detoxification enzymes in the liver. This was one that found the combination of omega-3 fats along with vitamin A and selenium helped ear infections, helped reduce ear infection symptoms in children. Okay, let's move on. So there are a whole lot of other vitamins and minerals I didn't get to talk about, and you're sure more than welcome if you've enjoyed this series to request another one at some point. I'll be glad to pick it back up and go into more of the individual nutrients. And the next slide shows a few more. And it's just amazing all the different, nutrients that our body needs and all the things in foods that help us stay healthy, including the phytonutrients, which do not fall into there are substances in plants that have really important activity for our health, and they're not a vitamin or mineral, though, but our body still needs them. Okay, next slide. So these are just some of the actions that these phytonutrients perform in the body. Next slide, Libby. Now, this is the big, I just love these. This is a nutrient database website. Oh, I thought I had, I hope I have the link on one of these slides. If we don't, I'll make sure we post it, add it to the slides before we post it. But I love comparing the nutritional intake of different foods. What I want you to see here is look at this apple. An apple is about 65 calories, so the green beans are a little lower in calories. But look at the difference in the carb content. One apple contains 62 grams of carb, whereas green beans only contain 9.8 grams of carb. And you'll see they each have a little fat, much less in the green beans than the apple, and a little bit of protein. But for that carb load in apples, and we always hear, an apple a day keeps the doctor away. Look at the difference in the vitamin A content between green beans and an apple. Much higher vitamin A content in green beans. A good bit higher vitamin C, and you don't think of green beans as a vitamin C source. Much higher in folate, much higher in choline, 183. All your fruits and vegetables are very good sources of potassium, and you need potassium to help control blood pressure. It's just as important as magnesium. And adequate intake of your potassium can really help your body balance the sodium intake much better. So I think of fruits and vegetables as insurance against, high blood pressure, if for no other reason than the potassium content alone. But look how much more magnesium, and there's selenium in green beans, whereas there is not any in an apple. And a little bit of B vitamins. And actually, you'd be surprised how much vitamin E. We always, I think, tend to think of vitamin E as our nuts and seeds and our grains as our best sources, but actually, you get a good bit of fatty acids in any plant. So your fruits and vegetables give you a little bit of vitamin E even. But the point is the nutrient density, how much more you can get from those green beans in that much lower carb and somewhat lower calorie package. Now, look at whole wheat. So one slice of whole wheat bread is about 69 calories. You get 12 grams of carb, 4 grams of protein, and a little bit of fat. And you get, look at the difference in the nutrition intake. Almost no vitamin A, no vitamin C. You get some folate, some choline, a little bit of potassium, a decent amount of magnesium in whole grains, being honest, and usually you'll see a decent amount of selenium. But what I want to point out is the difference in the niacin, B6, and riboflavin. It's not a ton. I mean, that's decent on niacin, but that's next to nothing on your B6 and riboflavin. And the reason I wanted to point this out is, because when I first started seeing criticisms of people going off of wheat, feeling that they wanted to test out or explore whether they had gluten sensitivity or intolerance issues, and people were saying, oh, you've got to get whole wheat, you need it for the B vitamins. Well, that's really the last thing you need it for. It is a decent, there are plenty of other foods that supply those nutrients, in particular your animal proteins. So you're not going to be lacking niacin, B6, or riboflavin if you don't eat whole wheat. It is a decent source of selenium, but if I have people not able to eat whole wheat because they truly do have gluten intolerance, I put them on to nuts and seeds, and in particular Brazil nut. So if you look at getting more significant nutrients from these, you really have to go up in the amount that you take in. This is a cup of whole wheat flour, and it's just not a good nutritional deal because you have to take in way too many grams of carbs and way too many calories to get up there on the nutrients. So that was the point. So look at nuts and seeds. These are just jam-packed little nutrition powerhouses. You don't get a lot of vitamin A or C, but you really get decent amounts of your vitamin E, decent amounts of folate, again potassium, and look how many minerals, calcium and magnesium. So when you want to get people taking in more minerals, one of the best food categories to do it with is your nuts and seeds. And that's what I wanted you to see here, was how much of the calcium and magnesium. That's 1 little ounce of almonds. That's not very much, and that's a really good amount of minerals. On Brazil nut, you do happen to get, I think this was 1 ounce of Brazil nuts, and look at all that selenium. And that's why 1 little Brazil nut alone will give you over the RDA for selenium. Okay, next slide. I wanted to show you something interesting about lettuce. I can never understand why people say don't even bother to eat iceberg lettuce because there is no nutrition in it whatsoever. Okay, on vitamin E, I grant you, it's much lower than naturally a darker leafy, green. So compared to red leaf lettuce, for example, it's much lower in vitamin A. But it's comparable, if not a little higher, in vitamin C. It actually has a little bit of vitamin E, and it's a pretty good source of folate, surprisingly. Decent on choline, really good on potassium, not as strong on calcium, but comparable on magnesium. And so if people want to eat a little bit of iceberg head lettuce here or there, I don't see any reason not to. Yes, you can get way more vitamin A with your deeper, richer greens, but sometimes I'll order a wedge salad from iceberg head lettuce when I'm out at a restaurant. I look at it almost as kind of a junk food, but you get a decent amount of nutrition in it. It's not like it's ridiculously low. So if they say no nutrition, I would expect to see all zeros on that left-hand column, and you just don't see it. So I just thought that you guys would get a kick out of knowing exactly what is truly in iceberg lettuce. So are we meeting nutrition needs today? We're not seeing outright deficiencies, but yes, we see, deficiency symptoms here and there. And we especially see problems from chronic long-term under-intake of specific nutrients like chromium and magnesium in particular for blood sugar regulation. So, we gotta help people out sometimes, and you have to look at what they have going on with their health. You see people that just have a lot of insulin resistance, have a very hard time controlling blood sugar, for example. You want to give chromium, magnesium, zinc, vanadium. You want to give those blood sugar regulating nutrients. Okay, let's move on. So that was what I wanted to show you with my next slides. That's our whole approach with the metabolic code. Not just the diet itself is ancillary to this. If I have somebody that has a lot of insulin resistance, we'll take the edge off of the demand by lowering that glycemic load. If we see people that have inflammation issues, we take down the food allergen, the common food allergens to lower inflammation. And we work all that together along with micronutrients and supplements to help them be effective with their health needs. Okay, moving on. So I wanted to show you some examples. One of the things we evaluate with our health assessment questionnaire in the metabolic code program is blood sugar. So these are some examples of some of the questions on blood sugar regulating issues. And if they come up high on their score between their answers on the questionnaire, and especially adding in the labs. And one of the big things here that will make people score a lot of points, it's weighted to score more points if people say, when I gain weight, I gain it in my midsection, because we know that's the weight that's caused by insulin resistance, is weight that comes on around the waist. Okay, moving on. So the next slide shows what we would do. Improve the diet. So the metabolic code diet is a low glycemic load diet. And then we would give them supplemental support. So our metabolic code diet product for blood sugar regulation is GluteReg4. And it contains chromium in the polynicotinate form, alpha-lipoic acid, which is a nutrient I didn't get to talk about, benfotiamine, which is a thiamine, fat-soluble form of thiamine, a new nutrient that they just found out about called PQQ, and vanadium. And that is our combination product, and I have seen that product alone turn around energy and insulin resistance in people with mild insulin resistance. If they have more advanced insulin resistance, we need to do the low glycemic load, and we may want to give them magnesium separately. In fact, we almost always do. And then if their insulin resistance has progressed to the point that it's caused lipid elevation, then we'll add a product like triendohelin, which will help specifically to help regulate the lipids better. So that's how we put it all together to help people get the outcome that they want without having to, hopefully, without having to go on a drug. So this is just extra information on alpha-lipoic acid, what it does, how it helps with blood glucose balance and regulation. Move on through Libby because I'm running a little bit long. A little bit more information on benfotiamine. So that's a super ingredient. And it actually has clinical studies showing that it improves all those things that you see in insulin-resistant people. Going back, Libby, the end product of endothelial dysfunction that happens from insulin resistance, the advanced glycation end products, the markers of inflammation, retinopathy symptoms, all improved with going on benfotiamine. That's how powerful that ingredient is. Okay, next one, PQQ. So it improves insulin signaling and glucose by being a mitochondrial catalyst. It improves the burning of the fuel once it gets in there, which helps keep creating the ability to take in the glucose and get it out of the blood. Okay, so PQQ, next one. So this is just another example. We go through thyroid. If you go to the next slide, Libby, the thyroid, this is our thyroid support product, our Thyrometab. Contains the base amino acid tyrosine that's needed to make thyroid hormones, along with the trace minerals chromium and selenium that are needed for conversion and production, and bladderwrack, which is a natural source of iodine, along with ashwagandha, adaptogenic herb, and coleus. Okay, moving on. And that just explains what I just went through. Coleus helps that cellular energy production. So that's what our program is. We have specific formulas and supplements to address different needs. So if someone has a stress and sleep need, these are the products that we use there. And next one. These are our products for other areas of metabolic disruption, gut health, toxicity, inflammation. And it all is important because let's say you have a person that comes in and they say, I'm telling you, I am in a lot of pain all the time, a lot of inflammation. I have joint pain that keeps me from really being able to exercise. We put them on Inhibitox so they don't have to take NSAIDs to be out of pain, and it helps them become more active without breaking down their gut. So just to give you an example, This was a testimonial we got just last week from one of our practitioners who said that he put his client on the metabolic code program that was recommended from the Air Support Questionnaire and put them on the diet, and in 2 months got triglycerides down from 422 to 122. Dramatic. So this was combination of diet with supplements. The VLDL went from 2,800 small particle to 1,100, a very low risk number, moderate to low risk. And LDL, look at that improvement, still not at an ideal, but much, much better in only 2 months. And HDL went up to a much better level, and only in 2 months. And I'm telling you, you see it over and over and over again, how impactive this combination of knowing what to do with diet, knowing how to support the body with nutrients and dietary supplement ingredients, amazing the results that you can get. So I hope this inspired you to take a little bit closer look at some of the micronutrients, and you've got good information. We'll open up for questions. Next time I am going to talk about diet for thyroid, food and nutrient strategies for optimal thyroid function. You know, there's a lot to diet for thyroid, and one of the things that comes up, and for example, is the intake of goitrogens. When you're recommending a very high fruit and vegetable diet, the intake of goitrogens can go up. So what do you do about that? So those are the types of things I'll talk about next time.
Thanks, Laura. We do have one question here. What is the mechanism of kidney stone prevention with B6?
Oh, let me think here. I'm not sure. I think it has to do with the. Actually, I think it has to do with the amino acid metabolism, nitrogen handling, somehow impacting those oxalates, uric acid production and oxalates. But that's a good question. I don't know exactly, but I do know that when we are working with kidney stones, we up the intake of magnesium and B6, and I usually do other B vitamins along with that, so we don't have a problem from too much of one vitamin, dramatically increasing the intake of those two things will usually do really well to help prevent the development of kidney stones in the future. And I also look at just alkalinizing people, making sure that they can get the pH up of the urine and saliva, because we do know that the increased acidity makes the oxalates come out of solution and develop into the stone.
We also have a comment that there is interest in another series for additional nutrients. And
okay.
Another question, what is the best multivitamin for general overall health? Is Photo Multi a good all-around vitamin?
Photo Multi?
Yes. Maybe it's a brand. I'm not sure.
You know, I'm not familiar with that one. The biggest thing I can tell you that I look for in terms of the quality of the multi is I really like, I much prefer the activated forms of the nutrients. So I don't like just straight folate. I like either a blend of folate with MTHF or all MTHF. For example, I like activated B6, you know, to the pyridoxal 5-phosphate as the activated form. And I look for things like, do they have instead of just alpha tocopherol, do they have mixed tocopherols? Or if they have just vitamin E, do they have it in a good, like I mentioned in my last one, the succinate form is a better form of that. And also, are the minerals in a good absorbable form, like an amino acid chelated form? That's the what I look for. You know, mixed tocopherols, mixed carotenoids, and activated forms of the vitamins.
A comment came through that yes, that was a Metagenics product, the Photomulti. It's like another question is, any suggestions for gallstones?
Actually, no. We do not do any of the, you know, like the magnesium, salt, and oil type therapies to try to get gallstones to move out. There's just too many problems from them. I know people that have said that those have worked, but they're pretty heroic. The best thing for the gallbladder and for bile salts is to work with the liver. So we'll work with things like artichoke extract, milk thistle, you know, ingredients that that support liver health, and you usually have to work on gut health. And again, our belief is that the stones form because of people being way too acidic. So we work on getting them alkalinized, which the best way to get alkalinized is just to increase fruit and vegetables. I know there's a huge thing out there about becoming vegetarian and not having animal proteins, but interestingly, when we check pH levels on people that come in, you know, as clients, you wouldn't believe how often people that report that they're vegetarian are extremely acidic. And so, you know, just taking animal protein out doesn't seem to do it. So we really feel that, and what we see consistently is keeping some animal protein in, but eating a lot of fruits and vegetables is the way to go for good alkalinizing. So that's the best I can tell you. We don't have a product or a protocol for once people have developed gallstones. We just don't like taking on that liability, for one. If people read things on the internet and want to try it, that's up to them. But once they have formed gallstones, we don't mess with it. But you can do things to try to prevent them for in the future if they, but typically if they have them that bad, it'll be hard to work through them, and they just have to see if they can get them removed or take a medication to help them pass.
Question, can we get the products you talked about from you? So I believe all of the recommendations that you included in the slides were carried in the Air Support online store. Did you sneak any others in there?
No, those were all our MCD formulas. So if it's a person that's listening that's not a practitioner, yes, you can. I can give you our clinic number. You could get them directly from us at our clinic, 949-464-4451. But if you're a practitioner, you can get access to them through our store that's affiliated with our Air Support, part of our metabolic code program.
Yes, and that's actually what the bullet point on the slide is referring to for registering. Register now at metaboliccode.com for the metabolic code system, which is the assessment tool, Air Support, and the lifestyle tool, lifestyle guidance portal. I'd be glad to do a demo for anyone who needs any information. Everything's available on the website, also where I'm going to post the recording of tonight's session. I can also email that phone number to you, Brad. Let me just copy your email address here. I'll make sure that you get that phone number if you need that as well. So appreciate everyone being here this evening. Look forward to seeing you at the next webinar. I will have that posted on our events page later in the month. Again, thanks, Laura, and everyone have a great evening. We'll see you next time.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.